One. Direction, my name is Jay Izzo, and oh man, do we have a great show. Holy cow. Listen, I want to tell you something. Here's the thing. This is a great book. First of all, this is a great book, Meaningful Partnership at Work. I know, because I've written about this. We've had guests talk about this before. Let's just talk about this, right? We all know that the statistics say the number one reason why people leave their job is their manager. Number one reason. This number one reason. You as a business owner, that's costing you money. Yes or no? Yes, right? Because turnover costs you money. We know how much that costs you, right? But here's the other thing. When we've had people who talk about managers on this show, what do they say? Well, they're frustrated with their people. We can't get the production we want out of them. They don't do what I want them to do. And we're frustrated. And so you've got people who leave because of their manager. You got managers who want their people to leave because they're frustrated. Do you know if this was a marriage, the divorce proceedings would be it'd just be out of crazy. I mean, it's just totally crazy. I'm telling you, lawyers can make money just from the divorces between managers and employees. We need some help, don't we, folks? We really do. Thankfully, I have two doctors with me today that are going to counsel us on how to make a meaningful partnership at work. Oh, you're going to love them. Dr. Seth Silver, Dr. Timothy Franz, they wrote this book called Meaningful Partnership at Work, secondary title, listen to this, How the Workplace Covenant Ensures Mutual Accountability and Success Between Leaders and Teams. You're going to need this. Take your notes, not if you're driving. All right, don't take your notes if you're driving, but take some notes. We're going to get to them right away, but we're going to do what we do every week because you're going to love them and you're going to love this book. Folks, we are four-part people. We're physical, mental, emotional, spiritual people. I have interviewed, if you've listened to the show, we've interviewed Special Operations Forces guys. Major General John Gronsky, who was in Iraq, right? They all said the same thing. You know what? You have got to be in a constant state of growth when it comes to your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual person. Because if you're not growing, you're dying. They all said it. Right? So what we do on the show is every week, we have you rank yourself for the last 7 days on a scale of 1 to 10, how your training is going in these 4 areas of your life. Right? So 1's being my training is awful. That's a 1. 10, my training couldn't get any better. That's a 10. 5 is right down the middle. So physically, if you were to evaluate yourself on eating right, getting enough exercise, drinking enough water, and getting enough sleep, what score would you give yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? I got Seth says 7. I got a 5 with Tim. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good. See, the point is, it's not about the number. The point is, whatever that number is, that's your starting point, because then you know what you need to do to start getting better, right? Because we all know. I don't have to tell you. We can all hold ourselves accountable, right? So you got your first number. That's your first number. Second number, mentally. Look, folks, we have two halves of the brain, a right half, a left half of the brain, right? Left side is logical. Right side is creative, right? What are you doing to develop those two halves of your brain, right? Listen, you can't sit on a couch and expect your mental side to grow. You have to be an active participant in your mental growth. Reading a book is a great way to do that. Like Meaningful Partnership at Work. That's a great book. But you know what? There's other ways too. Take up an instrument, learn a foreign language. There's so many ways that you can enhance the mental side of yourself to grow, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you evaluate your mental growth and your knowledge, your understanding of what you do, improving yourself? Scale of 1 to 10, same scale. 8 from Tim, 4 from Seth. Okay. Now you got 2 numbers. Third number is the emotional number. And, you know, we've talked so much about emotional quotients and emotional intelligence here. You know, Daniel Goleman and Kahneman have talked tons about emotional intelligence on so many different levels. You know, here, I'm going to break it down and make it really simple. 1, how well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure? And 2, how well are you able to tap into and truly understand the emotions of other people? That requires something that Seth and Tim are going to talk about, ERTAP, the very first piece. It's called empathy, right? Being able to truly listen in that second part. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you evaluate yourself across those 2? Ooh, I got 2 8s from both Tim and Seth. See, what's your number, okay? Then the fourth number, spiritual. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not really a spiritual guy, Jay. I don't really believe in spiritual things. You know what? If you remove the physical, the mental, the emotional, which pretty much have left is a spiritual thing. The truth of the matter is, You know what? If you made plans for the future and they haven't happened yet, you believe that they're going to happen, that's faith. Right? But the other thing is, when things go bad in our lives, we all run to something. And that becomes our God, whatever that is. We believe that there is some sort of ritualistic thing that we do that's going to help us. There is something that we believe that brings us back to center, or brings us back to core, or brings us back to a sense of joy. Something, for some people, it's God. For some people, it's nature. For some people, it's meditation. For some people, it's something else. The question is, how's it working for you? Is it working? And what do you need to develop it? And how would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 when it comes to your spiritual life?
Okay, Jay, I'm coming off of mute for this one because
Sure.
you know what? When you first said spiritual, I said, oh, a 2. But I love your definition of spiritual. And I'm going to give myself an 8, given your definition. I feel so much better right now about it because the time I spend doing things in nature. So thank
Does
you.
connecting with pets count as spiritual?
You know what? If does it bring you a sense of centeredness, a sense of peace?
Yeah.
So then I would say it counts as being spiritual. And you know what, folks? These 4 numbers that you have, right? They're like the legs of a chair. If the legs of a chair are uneven, right, it's going to create bad posture. Right. At the same time, if the legs of your chair are too low, you know what? You can't eat at a table and eat healthily. So we want to try to bring our legs up at the same height, and we want to sit at the table, and we want to be able to eat healthily. And speaking of 2 guys who clearly have done this pretty well, right? Seth Silver and Tim Franz, and I'm going to introduce you to them because they are awesome. Seth Silver is the principal of Silver Consulting Incorporated and has worked with hundreds of diverse clients on leadership, cultural change, employee engagement, and workplace success. He's also an associate professor of human resource development at St. John Fisher College. And of course, he's co-authored this book, Meaningful Partnership at Work, how the workplace covenant ensures mutual accountability and success and between leaders and teams. And then Dr. Timothy Franz is an industrial organizational psychologist at St. John Fisher College. He's a professor of psychology as well as chair of the psychology department, past program director, and chair of the graduate human resources development department. In addition to his academic work, he also is an organizational consultant through his independent consulting organization called Franz Consulting. His topical areas of expertise include team leadership, individual and team decision-making, improving team performance, and using teams to drive organizational change. And he has written several books. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show. And gentlemen, welcome to, for the first time, A New Direction. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Jay. I
Thank you,
loved your
Jay.
introduction.
Yeah.
Wow, that blew me away. That was
you.
great. And I love the way you set it up with the 2-way street of frustration. Managers being frustrated with their teams and not feeling supported.
Yep.
And then teams not feeling supported and being frustrated with their manager. That was absolutely a starting point for the book.
Well, it really is, because the book really does speak to that, because it really is part of the problem, isn't it? I mean, part of the problem that I know you guys run into as consultants, and part of the problem that I've seen as a coach when I walk into a lot of places, is that it's a very poor. Most of the time, it's fairly poorly communicated. What the wants and needs are, and I think you guys do a great job. Even in the introduction, you guys talk about that. You know, really, it should be a relationship that's mutual. That doesn't happen. Why do you guys think that we are at? Could you write about this a little bit? Why do you guys think that we're at such a loss? We're willing to take. You talk about it. We're willing to take care of the customers, but we ignore the relationship between the management and employees.
When I will say, like you said, that relationship is at the crux of so many things. And it's that relationship that's absolutely essential for getting people to be motivated, to stay, to be satisfied, to be engaged, to be good citizens of the organization, so many things. And I will say and Seth, I'll let you take it right after I say this one thing. You've hit it right on hit the nail on the head, Jay. This is not a leadership book. You know, leadership books that wag their finger and say, these are the 12 things you need to do to be a better leader. And it's not, Seth, the leadership expert, me, the team development expert. And it's not that team development book that says these are the 10 ways to be a better team. It's about that space in between, that relationship. So Seth, you go now.
Well, I guess I'd sort of like to do a 1 minute, description of what we jokingly call the origin story. And it's not Darwin or the Bible, but it's how this concept came about. And I was working for a large high-tech company a long time ago. And part of my role as manager of organization development was to do team building, mostly with engineering teams. So managers and maybe 8 to 10 different engineer employees. And I met with the managers and I would go through, what was going on in the team and what they wanted from the day or 2 day long experience and what they thought their groups had to learn or, discuss so that I could plan it out. I usually did this a few weeks before. And eventually I asked, how is it going with your team? And the managers almost invariably said, yeah, they're pretty good, but I wish, right? I wish they were more prepared. I wish they wouldn't have side conversations. I wish they'd respond to emails faster. I wish they would do more. I wish they would solve problems for themselves and not bug me, etc. Not complain about overtime and sunrise meetings at 7 a.m. and whatever. And then I'd meet the team and I'd ask the same set of questions without the manager. And the teams invariably said, we wish, our boss is a pretty good guy or gal, but we wish he or she would recognize our achievements. We wish he or she would fill that empty spot because the extra work's killing us. We wish we were better communicated to. We wish. And it was, I just walked away thinking, don't these two parties talk to each other? Clearly, they have things they need to feel supported. I mean, that's kind of the epiphany word that Tim and I came to later. But it was dawning on me back then, and they obviously didn't. And it was the sharing of expectations. Everything remained implicit, never explicit. And, that was a long time ago. That was the 90s. Tim and I started to work together around 2005, and we refined that conversation and that team building process into what we now call the workplace covenant.
That was the piece that I wish. I actually have that highlighted in my notes because it's the exact same thing. If people ever go to relationship counseling, what is the first thing that couples say when or if I'm with a group of people, the first thing is I wish he or I wish she. I don't know why they don't, or I don't know why he won't. I don't know why she won't. And the next thing you know, we have all these desires that you're communicating to me. But if you would just have had these conversations with each other, we would not be having this problem. It is in the workplace, and we're not paying attention, are we?
It's really interesting you say that because we don't. Seth and I, neither of us would say that we're counselors. And we have actually on numerous occasions had the conversation about, should we have talked about the family? Should we have talked about marriage relationships? Should we have? And we keep coming back to, no, that's, it's out of our wheelhouse. But in so many ways, and I'm kind of getting to something that we'll talk about later, but in so many ways, there is overlap. So one of the things you mentioned earlier, Jay, is this idea, this acronym we use, the foundation, ERTAP, empathy, respect, trust, alignment, and partnership. That's what it takes to really create the model that we say it takes to create this meaningful partnership at work. And we measured each of these in some of our research. Again, I'm jumping the gun a little and talking about some things later, but the alignment and partnership parts of ERTAP, there were no measurement tools for these. And so we actually borrowed from the marriage and family literature to create those. We modified them.
Because intake marriage counselors ask, are you on the same page about child rearing or about religion or money? Right. Yeah. And Tim modified those items to make the alignment survey. It was a brilliant piece of empirical research.
Well, I think this is a good place to talk about ERTAP because ERTAP, we talk about empathy, respect, trust, alignment, and then of course partnership. It's really so foundational to this whole idea of the workplace covenant. So let's talk about the importance of ERTAP because I want people to understand that if they can develop ERTAP, and what's the beauty of what you guys developed here is that if it's dominoes. It's essentially dominoes. If you get empathy, you're going to move to respect. If you got empathy and respect, you're going to get trust. If you got empathy, respect, trust, you're going to get alignment. And if you got those four, you're going to get to partnership. So let's talk about each of those, why they're significantly important, and how they play a role as we begin to unravel the workplace covenant. Let's start with empathy.
Sure. Okay, so you saw my face there for a second there, Jay. I think we view ERTAP as something of the solution, and I just need to take 30 seconds more on the problem.
Let's go back to the problem. That's great.
So the problem, which you articulated at the very beginning of this, this mutual frustration, but let's peel that frustration back a little bit. We call it the 4 Ds: disappointment, disengagement, despair, departure. We think that when people don't get the support they need, they feel disappointed. If it goes on too long, they begin to feel disengaged. If that goes on too long, they begin to feel like they're spinning their wheels and they can't go anywhere. So they kind of end up depressed, despairing, and just thinking this is a waste and boss will never change, teammates will never change. And then they depart. And the epiphany that Tim and I have had, and I'll just say it and then I'll let Tim take the ERTAP question, is that people are not feeling supported, but everyone defines support differently. So here's the thing. They'll say, I'm leaving this company because I didn't get paid fairly. Or they'll say, I'm leaving this company because my boss didn't appreciate, or I'm leaving this company because my teammates were pricks, or I'm leaving this company because I couldn't use my talents and there was no upward mobility. I wasn't able to do what I thought I could. They'll describe it differently. I use the analogy of a tree and a branch. The tree is support. We don't feel support, so we get disappointed, disengaged, despairing, and departing. We all define that level of support differently, which is why this conversation, each one of those reasons is a branch on the tree. And this is why the conversation that is created by the workplace covenant structure is so important. And when you have that conversation, then ERTAP begins to flourish. And then I'll kick it to Tim to.
Okay. Well, now hold on before you go, Tim, because I did not want to. I wanted to do the 4 Ds, and I somehow just jumped the gun because I got the dreaded 4 Ds, right? I mean, that's what you guys call it. It's right. Called the dreaded 4 Ds: dissatisfaction, disengagement, despair, and departure. But I think what you just described here, and I didn't see it when I read the book the first time or the second time, and that was I didn't see the domino effect of that. I didn't see the domino effect of dissatisfaction, then leading to disengagement, then the domino of despair, and then finally it leads to departure. I never saw that piece of it. It is
sequential. It is sequential. It's absolutely sequential.
And right. if you're getting to despair, I always think, sorry, my age is showing now, but the Princess Bride and the pit of despair.
Right. Well, the dreaded 4 Ds, right? The dreaded forest of whatever. Right.
If you get to despair, it's actually, dissatisfaction and disengagement, you can turn around. Despair, the farther you get, as those, Jay, you said it well, the dominoes to that. It's as you start to push more dominoes, it gets harder and harder to turn it around. And so once you get to despair, it's really hard to turn around. Dissatisfaction, you can turn it around. Disengagement, well, it's going to be more work, but despair is hard to turn around. That's when people are really giving up. So
yeah, this is, and then this is where, I know we're going to try to get to the workplace covenant, and we will, but I know that ERTAP is such an important part of understanding the workplace covenant.
It's because the vaccine to the virus of the dreaded 4 Ds.
Right. Because it's almost reversing the domino effect in the opposite direction.
Exactly.
So you're pushing it, right? I mean, that's how I saw it.
Right. That's exactly
and so
right.
As we have those conversations, to bring this all back to ERTAP, as we have those structured conversations, building that relationship between the leader and the team, we start to build empathy. We start to see somebody as what we can understand what they're dealing with now, because it's no longer I wish. It's no longer this, it's you that's the problem. It's we're in this together. We're supporting each other so that we all, it's not a trust fall. It's not a, it's to be succsuccessful. It's to create team and organizational success. How can we make the team
act
and the
of
organization
sharing
better?
Those expectations? What do I owe you so you will feel supported and be successful, which is the core question set of the workplace covenant. So if Tim and I have this working relationship with each other, if I offer, here are the 8 things I need to do for you, Tim, so that you will feel supported in our partnership and be successful, he has then learned something about how I see this relationship. When I put those 8 things on paper and I say, well, I owe you prompt replies to your emails, and I owe paying you quickly, and I owe consideration of your point of view when we make client decisions, and I owe, time to work together and work out details and disagreements, blah, blah. He now understands how I see that relationship. And when I hear his expectations of me and we compare those, my obligations to him, his expectations of me, I've learned something about his hot buttons. He's learned something about how I see this. Voila, more empathy.
Yeah. And so, yes, that's that understanding that we then can have for one another in the situation we're both in. It's not just they're the problem, but I understand now more about their situation. I understand who they are. I understand their needs. And once you build that empathy, you're exactly right. You then move to respect.
I'm gonna hold you right there,
Oh.
because we're gonna you know what, I'm gonna do a teaser, because we aren't going to get to respect until we're done with empathy. You know what? The book is entitled Meaningful Partnership at Work, available bookstores, everywhere bookstores sell books, and Amazon. Seth Silver, Timothy Franz, they are joining me here on A New Direction. Folks, I have two great sponsors here on A New Direction, Epic Physical Therapy. You know, you hear me talking about them all the time. Listen, they are my physical therapists, but they're not just my physical therapists. They are so many people's physical therapists, including professional athletes, literally from all over the world, come to Epic Physical Therapy. Why? The reason why they come there, and the reason why I go there, and the reason why so many people go there, is because, you know what? They don't just treat my symptoms and injury. They look at me as a functional whole, and they have a program specifically designed for me and for you. That's why they're so good. So when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, don't look any further. Start at Epic PT. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Crafted Team Realtors for more than 35 years. They've been top at the real estate game. How do they do it? You ask. It's because they understand that, you know what, it's more than selling a home or buying a home. They understand that that home is full of memories, and they want to treat that home in the way that you want that home treated, because they understand that those memories are precious to you and they are precious to them as well. So when you're ready to sell your home or buy your home, start with what her clients call the legend of customer service. Start with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. You can learn more by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Dr. Seth Silver and Dr. Timothy Franz, and Meaningful Partnership at Work, how the workplace covenant ensures mutual accountability and success between leaders and teams. We're talking about empathy. We're going through ERTAP, and we just talked about, and that stands for something. The first word is empathy, and we talked about that. And Tim, before you go on to respect in ERTAP, I wanted to say this about empathy, because it's a core thing for what I do when I do this show, especially emotionally. But I think one of the steps that is difficult, and why your workplace covenant, for both of you, this works so well, is because we finally got to get people in the room to understand the other one's position. And I think that is one of the critical pieces of the workplace covenant, is that for the first time, people are going to be heard and understood.
Right. It is the listening. It is that authentic dialogue and listening. Absolutely.
Yep. The conversation.
It really is. What do I? Here's my obligations. I'm a manager. Here's what I'm obligated to do. Right. I mean, because we're going to start there. That's what you say. Here are my obligations, and I just need you to listen to me, because I'm not trying to hurt you as a manager. I'm not trying to do. I just need you to understand me for a second. I have certain things I have to fulfill. And then you've got the other side, the team people, and as I read this book, that are going, yeah, I know, but you know what? I got to be more than just an employee to you. I need something more from you. I think that's the beautiful part of where this workplace covenant starts.
That's the title, mutual accountability and success, because sometimes it's only one way.
Right. Right. It's about that, back to that space in between. How do we become a better partnership, a better relationship? How do we continue to develop so that we can all be successful? Not about leaders being successful, but about that relationship, that exchange between the leader
Tim,
and the
this
team.
may be a good time to share with Jay and the audience the whole mindset of meaningful partnership. How do we define that? Because one of the things we do with groups is we have them think about, partnerships they've had over their career, and some were terrific and exceptional, and most were average or bad. And, what was it about those exceptional ones? And we use the word meaningful because when we were writing the book, Ruth Bader Ginsburg had just died, and all the tributes and obituaries were coming in, and it was said that she led a meaningful life. And Tim and I talked about that over gin and tonics and said, okay, what does that mean? And she had legacy, there was impact, it was above and beyond, and we thought, okay, that's the notion of partnership that we're after. It's a mindset, it's a belief that your welfare and success and interests are at least as important as mine, maybe more so, because if you succeed, de facto I will succeed. It's enlightened self-interest. It's maybe I'm sure you have, Jay, come across servant leadership. It's way different, because servant leadership has the problem of being a one-way street. And it takes a very exceptional and rare person to pull that off. But most people will do great things when they know that there's going to be some great things coming back. So it's just this mutuality. Tim, what else would you say about meaningful partnership?
I think you said it well. It's about both sides. And our model in the book, I know you've seen this, our model in the book is absolutely the leader in the team. But this works between two teams. We've done it in a manufacturing company in the southern tier of New York, where it was a matrixed organization, and it was one team that supported another team. So it's where both parties are fully accountable for the success of the other. And that's the goal. And that's what gets at, this is a perfect tie-in. That's what gets to that respect, which is I see the other as a legitimate partner, regardless of who they are, their background, what they bring. They are a legitimate partner, and I understand what they bring. Given the diverse world we're working in right now, I can respect that person. And of course, once we have that respect, then it moves to a mutually beneficial, trusting relationship where I have your back, you have my back. I'm not going to speak ill of Seth in the background. Seth's not going to speak ill of me. I trust that we are going to treat each other well, not just to each other's faces, but in the background. And Seth is we actually have a covenant to one another.
Yeah, absolutely we do.
So,
absolutely we do.
Seth's showing off our covenant. So
it's our 10-item covenants, because we're consulting and we're writing and we're speaking, and so this is how we have agreed to work together, and we call each other when we trip on those things, and the feedback is non-emotional and quick and intended to help.
Yeah. And in fact, I'm going to say one person in a recent talk that we gave to a local professional organization said, well, it sounds like you don't do anything wrong. And I said, absolutely not. And going to Seth and my covenant, we both have screwed up, but we've agreed to this. We've committed to this. We're obligated to do this. And so when Seth calls me out, and he has, and I've called Seth out and nicely, on your covenant, you said this, I want to respect the covenant. This is what I expect, and this is what you are obligated to do. So it creates a real structure for having that dialogue. Very important word that I learned from Seth, and he can talk about the importance of the word dialogue versus discussion. It creates a dialogue where people get that mutual understanding, empathy, respect, trust, the foundations for alignment, number 4. And there's so many terms that get at that alignment: singing from the same songbook, paddling together,
simpatico, on the same page.
On the same
we
page.
Use the term. We use these expressions. And what was interesting is, when Tim was doing the research, so this is the research part of this coming out now, is there were good measures for empathy and respect and trust, but there were no measures of alignment. It's a word used in business all the time, and no one had defined it. And this was, I think where Tim was brilliant, going to the marriage counseling literature and pulling out items and modifying them. But the gist of it is, are we, the two in a canoe metaphor, you read that at the beginning of the book. And, for those of us who love canoeing, I have certainly, and everyone who's canoed has canoed with someone who can't canoe. And it's funny, for a while, you're going in circles because you're doing great, long, strong strokes. And, they're just sort of dipping the paddle in the water, drip, drip. And of course you go in circles, or you don't go anywhere, or you go off course. But when you're mindful of the other person, and you're breathing and you're stroking at the same time with the same level of effort, and one of you knows how to steer, then it really is exhilarating. And it is that alignment. that we're trying to get to. And that gets you to the P in partnership, but then we talk about meaningful partnership, which is that step above. I mean, there's fit and then there's really fit, right?
Right.
So it is that additional level of partnership where you care more about the other person's interests, success, and achievement as you do your own.
So I want to back us up here a little bit, because in ERTAP, and you guys talk about this, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant as well, because this has become a hot topic, is you get the empathy, respect, and trust. We start developing this idea of psychological safety, which I felt was something that you guys pointed out in your quick tip, and something that I think is really, and you also wrote about it a little bit further in the book. But I think there's this idea that we're not safe. I can't have these conversations with my manager, or my manager is not, or, as a manager, I can't have these conversations with my team. I'm going to lose them. And so but when we get to this empathy, respect, trust piece, at least to that point, now we're starting to develop some psychological safety. I got that right?
100%. Go ahead,
Tim. Completely. And plus the team, it's not my covenant. So Jay, it's not my covenant to you, right, as the host here, and us as the people coming on your show. It's our covenant together, and it would be Seth and me working together. So it's not just what I want, what I'm obligated to do, what I expect of you. It's what the team in general, and certainly there are those red herrings that sometimes people throw out. That's a one-shot deal. That's one person, but teams are really self-correcting. Work teams, especially ones that have been together for a while, they'll work around that one red herring that's thrown in there and get an organized one that is from the team, not from Tim, not from Seth, but from the team. And so between the building respect and trust and the work together as a team, it really creates a psychologically safe environment to have these dialogues.
Yeah, to build on that. So we talked, I think maybe before we started filming here, the covenant reviews, and in that forum, the covenants that have already been established are self-reflected on and self-assessed, and that is shared. And then the other party looks at your covenant and gives you feedback. And what is beautiful over time in that discussion and dialogue is that the feedback becomes almost non-emotional, because the context of it is, how can you become what's my advice to you so that you live up to your covenant more and better, which will make you a better partner, which will make us successful. And the analogy I like to use is sports. Okay, I'm a hockey guy. I'm from Canada originally. So imagine a coach who tells a hockey player, hey, you got to use your hips when you do a slap shot, and you got to breathe out. That'll make your slap shot harder and faster. There's no hockey player in the world I know who would say, oh, I'm mortally offended if you hurt my feelings by telling me that. I can't believe you're denigrating my slap shot. Most players would say, thanks, coach. I hadn't thought about that. If I do that, I'll have a harder shot. Maybe we'll win more games. It is that spirit of, I want your feedback because it'll make me a better performer and a better partner, and thus we all do better. If you were canoeing, okay, and I said to my canoeing partner, if you dip the paddle a little deeper and then pull, you're going to get a better stroke. I would hope my canoeing partner would not be personally offended. They would realize the advice is based on more canoeing experience and more success. So this feedback thing, I think feedback for a lot of places is scary, and it is not a psychologically safe activity, whether it's boss to team or team to boss. And the beauty of the workplace covenant is we've already established what we're accountable for. We created it, so we own it, and we signed it. Those are our covenants. And now I'm going to give myself feedback and share it, and then you're going to give feedback to me. And those assessments may be different, they may be very similar, but the idea is, the whole thing is, how can I be a better partner, and how can you be a better partner?
I love that. By the way, you gave a hockey analogy. Coach Ken Goodfellow out in Ottawa, actually Canada, who, by the way, thanks for listening, Coach Ken, who is a former hockey coach, I think just fell in love with you guys even more. Thanks to your little analogy there. So I think he's really grateful for that. I want to talk something that is kind of an extra literature to the book that hit me. When we've got ERTAP, right? When we've got this, it dawned on me, we're actually, in a sense, because once I have that alignment and partnership, I'm actually creating culture. I feel like I'm creating culture here because now what I've done is, because we talk about alignment and culture a lot, right? In my workplace covenant, my one page, and we're going to talk about what that really is. But when I put that all together, I go, I've now recreated a culture between my manager and my team, or the student and the professor, or because this works for so many different contexts and industries. That was something that came out of this for me as I read this. Did I miss it?
No, absolutely. So it takes through that dialogue, it takes those espoused values that people say they're going to do. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And people have those intentions all the time, and people judge themselves based on their intentions, but they judge others, and others judge us based on our behaviors. And so it takes those values and makes them enacted behaviors. It's behavioral, it's attitudinal. And then it gets some of those artifacts, some of those deeply held underlying implicit assumptions that people have, and pulls them to the top.
The one limitation and the one caution I would say is it changes culture for that team. It doesn't necessarily change culture of the organization, unless the organization has committed to a cascade of this process.
Right.
But yes, let's say a given team, Tim and I are doing a lot of work lately with academic institutions. So a given dean may have a workplace covenant with his or her department chairs, and that's a great thing. And actually that can affect a little bit of it, but there's other schools and there's other faculties and there's other departments. So yes, that team benefits, and now the team feels safe giving feedback to dean, and the dean feels safe giving feedback and not afraid to give it to the chairs because they've agreed to these behaviors. And there is now more psychological safety, a better responsive leader, and a more self-correcting team. So yeah, absolutely, culture's improved, but only in that area.
Right. Yeah. No, I wasn't implying. I didn't mean to imply that it was the whole organization, but certainly within there. Now we've got a subculture within the greater culture of your business that is now in alignment with each other. I think that's a beautiful thing. So let's talk about the actual covenant itself, because I can hear people saying to me, and I even said it, as I was reading this book, I was saying, okay, guys, I love the idea of having a workplace covenant. When I was in graduate school, we worked on behavioral contracting like crazy. We were doing all sorts of research on behavioral contracting, and it was a tough road to hoe for many businesses. Some of them use a behavioral contract, but it's more than a behavioral contract. You use the word covenant and we go, oh, gee, I don't know. That's kind of feels pretty religious to me. And then you're going to put this all together. So help us walk through what this workplace covenant is, and how we can make that happen, and why it's so powerful as a one-page document, what that document might look like.
Yeah,
I guess.
Tim, take the religious dimension.
I'm going to take the religious part. So, we talked a lot about the term, and I admit, and I'm going to throw this to Seth for a second and give him some kudos. The origin story that Seth told, this came from Seth. In about 2005, he was talking to me about this, and I realized the impact, the psychological underpinnings, why this works so well, and the long-term impact from doing this on an ongoing basis rather than a one-shot OD intervention. And I thought the workplace covenant, and he explained it's not religious. And no, it is absolutely not religious. We don't have any religious connotations. However, how many times have you made a workplace promise or a workplace commitment and not kept that promise or commitment? We needed a term that broke people away from the word promise and commitment, and those, they just don't feel very strong. Whereas you have a workplace covenant, there's an obligatory weight to thinking, I have a covenant with somebody else. I have this strong, specific behavioral and attitudinal
professional
document.
and personal integrity is on the line.
Yeah. And so the best way I can describe it is it creates more obligatory weight. That's why we really, after talking about it and after hearing, Seth's initial ideas, we've stuck with the word covenant, not religious. This is
and not a contract either, because we didn't
No.
think that there's necessarily harsh consequences for breach
right.
or infraction.
It's not
Um,
legal. That
Yeah, it's
sounds
not a legal
legal.
thing where some sort of, avalanche of negative consequences
Right.
happen. It's just, it's like, I give you my word, I will be there at 9:00 tomorrow morning. I give you my word in my covenant that, I will take your calendar into account when I make commitments to our respective clients. And we do our best, and sometimes we screw up, and then Tim tells me about it, and then I tell Tim about it.
That actually was. We're both laughing because that is, I'm the professor who consults, and Seth is the consultant who professes. And my calendar, calendar is very different because I'm a chair and I have dean's meetings and chair meetings and so on and so on. And that is actually one of our covenant items. That Seth, you make these appointments and I can't make them.
So let me go back to the big
one.
picture here. So in the book, we have a triangle. Think of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs triangle, but it's only got 3 sections, right? And the top section, the top pinnacle of the triangle, is the meaningful partnership that we've talked about. It is this mental state, this mindset of connection, collaboration, cohesion, and coordination. In the middle is the ERTAP, which we've talked about, right? Empathy, respect, trust, alignment, partnership. These psychological stages that we believe literally underpin, because it's right below meaningful partnership in the triangle, underpin partnership. And then what's the lowest of the 3 sections is the workplace covenant, which is essentially a relationship building tool. It's a relationship building process where you put 2 parties, typically a manager and a team, but as you said, 2 individuals, 2 teams, any 2 parties that have an important and enduring work relationship. And both parties articulate, what do I owe you so you feel supported and can be successful? What do I expect from you so that I feel supported and can be successful? And it is this exchange, it is this compare and contrast, it is this merging of the expectations of one party with the obligations of the other, so that you have this combined list, which we then call a covenant, which then gets signed and then gets reviewed formally at least every 2 months, and informally, at least once or twice a week.
Right.
Even.
And expectations are something that's hard to say, I did it. So the expectations are merged into the obligations. So it's a list of what I owe you. So.
The book is called Meaningful Partnership at Work. Dr. Seth Silver, Dr. Timothy Franz joining me right here on A New Direction. Folks, Epic Physical Therapy offers the most advanced top-of-the-line equipment. Some of my favorites, the anti-gravity treadmill, the Normatec compression sleeves, the Game Ready, which I love. That's just a few. They are trained and certified in the most comprehensive cutting-edge treatments available, like blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling, and cupping, just to name a few of them. Listen, when you want your epic relief, epic recovery, and epic results, don't look any further. Go to Epic Physical Therapy. That's epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors. For more than 35 years, they've been helping people all over the world. Check out their website, lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. It is probably one of the most comprehensive websites in the world. I'm not making that up. It really is. There's literally something for everyone there, including the kids, on how to move with kids. Yeah, she consulted a psychologist. What do we need to know about relocating? Why would she go to that effort? Because she understands that it's more than a home and buying or selling a home. There's people involved. And it's not P's and L. P&Ls doesn't mean profits and losses. It means people and lives. And that's part of her core belief as a real estate professional. So listen, when you want to talk to the real estate professional, whether you're selling a home, buying a home, start with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. That's LINDACRAFT.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my 2 new friends, and I'm so giddy. Dr. Seth Silver and Dr. Timothy Franz. Guys, are you having a good time?
We are
having a great time. I really love being on this show, Jay. It's a fun show to be on. I appreciate this.
Thank you.
Jay, would it help to tell a 1-minute story of a client situation?
Yeah, I was going to just Dr. Silver, you're reading my mind, and that's not something you're supposed to be doing. I was going to say there are several examples that you. In this book that you guys have written, available on Amazon bookstores near you, there are several examples in this book, and I thought it might be helpful if you picked one relevant example of your choice, because there are several. I think there's at least 4, and that I have recorded here in my notes that can kind of maybe help understand the situation and then how the covenant works. Which one would you like to go with?
So I think the story of Mick, this is a nursing home, mid-size, about 100 plus beds. And, I sort of called him the nice but non-confrontational boss. He knew the industry. He was a pleasant fellow. The residents, the families loved him. Generally speaking, the staff liked him, but also was concerned that he wouldn't address problems. And what was going on with, the presented problem when we showed up was he was okay with his team, although albeit not feeling as supported as he wanted them to be. But it was really a silo situation within the team. There was definitely a schism, and there was sort of the nurses and the medical piece of his directorship, because he had like 12 people, and about 4 or 5 of them were nurse types and responsible on the medical side. The others were social work and finance and food and that kind of thing, admissions. And there was just this absolute wall between them. And the one group, ate together, sat together, had meetings together, and the other group did its thing. And there was a long standing, and there were also just frankly bad leaders. They had a real hemorrhage of employees going on, about 40% turnover. And it should have been more like 15. Long story short, we did a bit of team building. We did a bit of leadership training, but we did this workplace covenant. And it just got them to start talking to each other, and this notion of one team. We are one team. We are one leadership team. And at first it was, there was trepidation. The real breakthrough, frankly, was in the first and then later the second covenant review. And it was where one person at the end of the first review kind of raised their hand and said, and I'm just so sick of these silos and so sick of these walls. And we're trying to be one team. If this covenant stuff, and she kind of pointed at the flip chart pages and the stuff we had typed up, and if this is going to be our new reality, then we've got to come together. We've got to start making group decisions. She was tearing up. This was clearly very emotional for her. And then the nurses started to tear up because they were the ones whose the finger was being pointed at. And it was kind of a therapy moment. There was some hugging and tearing and apologies and such. But after that, when we came back for the second and third reviews, they were sitting together. They had agreed to make decisions together. The wall had come down, and they had embraced this new reality as envisioned by these covenants. And I recall Mick coming up to us and saying, wow, that was just, that was a breakthrough. That couldn't have happened without this process. So, long story short, it pulled apart that wall. It helped them hit reset. And I think that's such a valuable concept. Teams need to hit reset. They carry baggage. People carry baggage from you. Oh, Bill, he screwed me over. I'll work with the guy, but I don't really like Bill. 3 years ago, he said bad things about me in the team meeting. They carry these chips and baggage, and there's no way to hit reset, forgive, and start over. That's also what workplace covenants do.
Well, and Seth, I'm gonna take that a little farther. They have these chips and this baggage that creates, without a lot of people realizing it, these microaggressions towards others. And this workplace covenant process moves those microaggressions to positive micro adjustments. How do we continue to develop and improve with this mutual feedback around what we can do, what we've agreed to do, and how to act towards you? So.
Well, I think in chapter 13 called Final Thoughts, your closing arguments, which are the most powerful closing arguments I've ever heard or ever read. The very first one is what you guys are talking about. Relationships matter. That's the very first closing argument. I mean, the fact of the matter is we got to get to a point, right, where whether I'm a team or whether I'm a manager, that relationship matters.
Right. Relationships are the threads of the fabric we call our organization. The more effective your relationships are, the more effective and satisfied you'll be. Paraphrasing a little bit there, but right. That's the notion, right? Our organizations are really nothing but a tapestry. They are a fabric woven together of relationships. And if those relationships are frayed or strained or broken, it looks like a thing that's had threads pulled out or has holes in it, right?
Well, you said, you guys wrote that in your tapestry analogy that if you find the right thread and you pull on that, the whole thing disintegrates because the relationship, because that tapestry is not strong enough.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. And the senior team would be a good example of that. If the senior team is dysfunctional, as it kind of sort of was at this nursing home, because they were not getting along with each other, they were also poor leaders who had little education in what leadership is. And yeah, that had a cascade effect through line staff who in an otherwise fairly rural setting were inclined to just say, take this job and you know what with it.
You guys also say in your closing arguments, your work relationships are not as good as you think. I mean, that sounds like you're asking us to really do some heavy duty self-examination.
Self-reflection is really the key to improving. Reflection gives us that opportunity to learn. And without that reflection, we can't learn. And without that learning, we can't change. So reflection leads to the learning, which leads to our ability to change.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you,
mean,
Seth,
I
for
think
that, by the way.
sure. I think almost every client we've been with, even as open and transparent and humble, they have all assumed a better relationship with colleagues than is probably the case. I mean, you started with husband and wife too. You know, I think a lot of us in a marriage situation would like to assume we have a better relationship than we do. But if our spouses could have their minds read, I'm sure there would be a whole bunch of things they would tell you about being married to me or Tim or whatever.
Or married to me, trust me.
Yeah. So, you know, in that spirit, it is absolutely imperative, particularly for managers, to assume that their relationship with their team is not as good as they think it is, because 99.999% of the time, that is absolutely the case.
I think that Tim was pointing to you, Seth. So I'm going to let you kind of hammer this one. When you say authentic dialogue is both a means and an end, help us understand that.
So quality of conversation. I mean, there's been, you know, people who have researched and written on dialogue. David Bohm, a famous physicist from the late 1940s, talked about, you know, the Greek meaning of the word dialogos, to search for meaning and to find meaning. And he contrasted that with discussion, which means to hit or break apart. So in a dialogue, you're searching for meaning, you're listening with a very heightened sense of listening and listening for the feelings as well as the facts. You're listening to learn as opposed to listening to respond. And the dialogue is intended as kind of a barometer, right? It's both a measure of how good the relationship is, because if the quality of dialogue is honest and deep, that's a good sign. But it also helps create the quality of relationship. So yes, it is a means and an end. And as the relationship gets better, the dialogues get better. And as the dialogues get better, the relationship gets better. So it is a self-perpetuating positive cycle.
Yeah, that authenticity piece, right? That, you know, because we do have a lot of, I don't know if we have really, can we have inauthentic dialogues? I'm just asking that question because I don't know the answer.
Oxymoron.
I think it's an oxymoron. I think we can have inauthentic conversations.
Right.
By saying dialogue, where that really means you're having something that is authentic,
meaningful.
That is meaningful. That is that word meaningful again. There it goes. You know.
Let's define authentic, though. Let's define authentic.
Right.
I confess I was inspired by, you know, writings by Peter Block, you know, kind of
Sure.
a mentor and hero of mine. And the way he defines it in one of his books, I think it's Flawless Consulting. He says it's sharing your feelings when you're feeling them. What are you feeling in the moment? Obviously, with a certain filter of appropriateness. But if you're feeling frustrated, say it. If you're feeling appreciative and grateful, say it. If you're feeling angry, pissed off, and undermined, say it.
Right.
And I think that's kind of a useful way of looking at authentic.
Let's talk about something you say, don't fear feedback, fear not getting it. Timothy?
Well, this is interesting. I love this point, and actually,
I did too.
I'm on a Zoom tomorrow with a friend of mine with his students, talking about the importance of giving feedback, because feedback really is, I mean, Ken Blanchard, feedback is the breakfast of champions.
Right.
And if you're not getting feedback, why is that? People are afraid in that relationship. You are not having, to tie this to the part we were just talking about, you're not having that authentic dialogue. People are afraid to give you that information to help you improve. They are concerned there is no psychological safety. So feedback is, if done properly in a psychologically safe way, if done in an ongoing way, Seth brought this up earlier. We've created a culture in organizations that's afraid of feedback because feedback is punitive once a year, tied to your performance, and given you as a judgment on your raise or promotion or whatever that is, rather than this ongoing developmental process. I mean, I'm in a learning organization. My core job as a college professor. Developmental feedback is absolutely essential.
I like to
improve.
joke that the first performance appraisal was the Garden of Eden, and it didn't turn out well. Historically, maybe that was the first performance appraisal.
That's awesome.
Banished and painful labors after that.
Guys,
So,
I got to tell you something. We've been on an hour, and it has just flown by for me. I am going to say something that you wrote, and then I'm going to have you guys let the audience know how they can get hold of you. One of the things you wrote is like the human body, partnerships need healing and repair. And I think that really summarizes everything that you guys are doing with Workplace Covenant and Meaningful Partnership at Work, the book that's outstanding. Folks get it wherever books are sold. So fellas, how do we get a hold of you? How can the audience reach out? They could use some consulting. They want to find out more about how to do this Workplace Covenant. Seth, let's start with you.
Sure. I have a LinkedIn profile, so you can certainly find me, Seth R. Silver, on LinkedIn. My website is silverconsultinginc.com, Silver Consulting Inc. And my email is drsethRsilver@gmail.com.
Okay. And Timothy?
Well, I'm active like Seth on LinkedIn. I think it's under Tim Franz Consulting, but Timothy Franz will find it. Very active on LinkedIn. Seth and I both post regularly. And so that's a great way to get a hold of me. My website is teambuildingprocess.com. That's teambuildingprocess.com. And then finally, my email, timothy.m.franz@gmail.com.
That's awesome.
Jay, we're going to say thank you in a second, but I just want to say, and I think I can represent Tim on this. Of all the podcasts we've done, this was the one where the host was the most prepared, had read the book the most thoroughly, and really understood the concepts. And you got it, and it was just such a joy to respond to your questions, your insights, what you had read, and what you circled and highlighted. So thank you so much for your preparation.
Yes. Thank you, guys. This was a fun book. It really was, and I enjoyed it. And so stay with me here before we go. Folks, it's the show. You know what I say to you every week, right? You're in control of two things all the time, regardless of your circumstance, and that is your attitude and your effort. Get a hold of them, because you can. Right? It's not always easy. It can be difficult, but you can control your attitude and you can control your effort. I'm going to be back next week with another great guest. It's going to be another great book. It's going to be another great show. And as I say to you all over the world, and you know what that is, right? Ciao, everybody.